Robert Butterfield, The Hidden City, Van Ark 1. Prologue 1. Thursday, September 15th, 6 months after the disappearance of Daniel Helliston. I woke up early. Instead of rolling out of bed bleary-eyed sometime in the afternoon, I was getting used to watching the morning light filter into the room. It was still hard to accept the way things had changed for me during the past 6 months, but lately I found that I actually wanted to go out and explore the outside world on most days. I went to the kitchen thinking that I might make some coffee and round up a little breakfast. I knew that, pretty soon, I was going to have to go out and find a way to make a living. My savings were almost gone. On the one hand, I was pretty sure that private investigation was no longer an option for me, not after everything I'd been through. On the other hand, I didn't have very much experience doing anything else, and I couldn't picture myself folding pants at the Gap. I glanced at the calendar that was up on the wall by the refrigerator. It was a gift from the Happy Lotus, a Chinese place around the corner. All regular customers received one gratis. It featured a picture of a lotus blossom along with a prominent display of a takeout menu and the phone number of the restaurant. It suddenly dawned on me, as I looked at the calendar, that it was my birthday. I was not surprised that I'd forgotten about it. I was surprised that I was not more depressed about this revelation. I was in such a halfway acceptable mood that I decided to celebrate by going out and getting breakfast at the coffee shop around the corner. I grabbed a paper from the newsstand on the way in, got my coffee and bagel, and sat down to eat. I looked over at the television that was mounted on the wall across the room. The sound was turned down pretty low, but I could make out that CNN was on and that they were covering a breaking local news story. A camera crew was over at Cleopatra's Needle, the monument in Central Park. It looked like there was a pretty heavy police presence there. There were also a number of ambulances and a fire truck or two present. The monument was an obelisk. A big, long, phallic-looking thing, sort of on the order of the Washington Monument. There appeared to be someone tied to the needle, about halfway up. This piqued my interest. It meant that someone had managed to hoist a body off the ground, about 35 feet in the air, and had then somehow tied it to a standing structure. This would have been difficult enough to achieve in a more private location, but to actually use a public landmark for this kind of thing, that was pretty impressive. I could make out the announcer on the television saying that CNN was going to show a close-up of the scene and that viewers might want to have children leave the room. The camera zoomed in, and you could see that it was a woman up on the needle. She appeared to be naked except for the chains that were wrapped around her body, binding her to the obelisk. The shot was a very brief one. I knew that CNN would probably not catch any flack for the close-up because the chains were arranged in such a way as to strategically cover the woman's body. Full frontal nudity would undoubtedly offend some viewers. Those same viewers would more than likely find their eyes glued to the aftermath of violent carnage. The woman, aside from being naked, also appeared to be very, very dead. There seemed to be a great number of lacerations on the limbs and trunk of her body. It appeared that somebody had apparently also gouged her eyes out for good measure. It was hard to tell for sure because the camera did not focus on her face for very long, probably to spare the more sensitive of viewers. There was a sign hanging around her neck, and I dropped my cup of coffee as the camera again zoomed in and I was able to make it out. The letters appeared to be written in blood, and they spelled out, "Happy Birthday, John." I knew then, without a doubt, that they were coming for me. I sat at the table and tried to collect my thoughts. I realized that my survival would now depend on how sharp I was and how quickly I could react. As I sat there, I thought back to the day it had all started and the phone call that had changed everything for me. It had only been 6 months since that day, but it seemed like an eternity. My life had not, admittedly, been on a very steady course prior to my getting involved in the search for Daniel Helliston. But whatever problems I had going in, they all seemed like blessings to me now. March may have come in like a lion, but instead of going out like a lamb, for me, it had been the beginning of a waking nightmare. And as the nightmare began to surface for me, I had no idea of how far under it had already pulled Daniel Helliston.